Hi everyone, I'm Anne-Marie from brambleberry.com, and I'm here to show you a really great melt and pour project. Now, if you've never done melt and pour before, don't worry, you can actually do this project. I know it looks like it's pretty complicated, but in reality, it's actually pretty simple, and I'm very excited to show you how it's done. With a little bit of parental supervision, this is also a really kid-friendly project. I do this with my toddlers all the time, and they love making melt and pour soap. I've kept this project pretty natural for you guys. So I'm using natural colorants and I'm using lemon essential oil, which is, oh, so bright and fresh, and of course, all natural. And if you wanted to really ramp up kind of the honey theme in this, because I'm also using honey melt and pour from brambleberry.com, which has real honey added to it. So if you really wanted to amp up that honey kind of theme for this project, I would use either the lemon honey from Brambleberry, which is this amazing fragrance that smells like, yes, lemons and honey, or this raw honeycomb fragrance. And both of them are fantastic in melt and pour soap and really would do justice by this project. For this project, because again, I was trying to keep it a little more all natural, I'm using the yellow Brazilian clay, which is mined from a variety of places in Brazil and has a naturally occurring yellow tint, as well as charcoal. Now, charcoal is lighter than air. So if you're working with charcoal at home, I want you to think about that before you start to mix in, because I have had poofs of charcoal everywhere and it's a mess to clean up. I'm gonna be dispersing them in a little bit of chamomile extract, and the chamomile extract is really reputed to be very good for dealing with redness in the skin and helping to soothe sensitive skin. And in this case, it's in fractionated coconut oil. And so it's going to help disperse any clumps in our clay and also any clumps that are in the charcoal. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to need to do is chop up our melt and pour into about 1-inch cubes. And the reason we do this is because when we melt it down in the microwave, we want it to melt down cleanly and easily. And if you try and melt this entire block, it burns part of the soap and it doesn't really melt down cleanly and easily. So I'm just gonna chop up this honey melt and pour soap and this white melt and pour soap from brambleberry.com into small 1-inch cubes. I really like working with both of these bases because they are chock full of naturally occurring oils, meaning all natural oils that are really skin loving and are particularly good for your sensitive skin and any sort of basic soap recipe you want to make. So now I'm going to put these into my Brambleberry Easy Pour container, which, by the way, I love because this pour spout really helps to make swirling a lot easier because you can control the kind of depth and trajectory and speed of your pour so you don't end up over swirling. Another thing, it's also microwave safe. And speaking of which, I'm gonna microwave this in 30-second bursts, probably for about 1.5 minutes or so, maybe 2 minutes to get this all melted down evenly and smoothly. So now that this one is melted, my white melt and pour soap is melted, there's a few chunks left in the bottom and I'm just gonna let them sit there and I'm gonna stir it in while I go ahead and get this honey melt and pour soap melted. So putting it right into our Easy Pour container here, melted on 30-second bursts, done and done. Now that both of my melt and pour soaps are ready to go, so the clear and the white are both melted, I'm going to also pre-mix this. In an ideal world, I would have probably pre-mixed my charcoal and my yellow Brazilian clay a little bit earlier in this process, but I'm gonna do 1 tablespoon of the chamomile extract. And again, that chamomile extract is so skin loving and it's in fractionated coconut oil, so it's gonna break up those clumps. I'm taking the mini mixer from brambleberry.com and I'm taking the lightest color first, which is my yellow Brazilian clay. And you can see it is kind of a little clumpy, so I'm just gonna gently turn this on, work out all the clumps. Now I'm going to my black. And remember, this charcoal really can poof up. Now it's a naturally occurring product, so it's fantastic to use and in keeping with our kind of natural idea here, but you wanna make sure it is fully wetted down before you turn on that mini mixer. So the yellow is going in the white, so we're gonna get a really nice earthy kind of pastel yellow. Gorgeous. And then the black is going in the clear. Now, if we added the black to the white, we would get gray soap. Totally fine, but not the look we're going for. So something to keep in mind if you're thinking about changing up the colors in this recipe. So the black charcoal into the clear, and then we have our essential oil to add. And again, we're using lemon essential oil from brambleberry.com, which is expressed from the peels of lemons. It is so bright and crisp and clean and herbaceous, and I love it in melt and pour soap projects especially. It's a pretty strong essential oil, so I'm just gonna do 5 milliliters in each of these. So it's about 1.5 dropperfuls. With melt and pour soap, it's really easy to understir the fragrance or essential oil in. And what ends up happening if you do that is the essential oil can sometimes float on the top of the surface of the soap, or even worse, if you're using some types of soap molds, the essential oil will make these weird little pock marks in it. So make sure you're stirring a little bit longer than you think you need to. Plus, with our natural colorants, stirring also helps to make sure they're fully incorporated in. While I'm stirring this essential oil into my black, I'm just gonna check my temperatures here. The ideal temperature to do this swirling effect is about a 120 to 125 with this particular Brambleberry set of melt and pour bases. I'm a little bit warm, so I'm actually gonna have to let this cool down. The secret to letting melt and pour soap cool down without developing a skin is either to keep it moving, so just keep stirring periodically, or you can also put saran wrap over the surface of the soap and kind of walk away for a minute or two and then come back and check it. Both work equally well. Now, if you're anything like me, you get a little bit impatient, and so this is like at 150 and this is at 149. So one of the things I like to do as well to get my soap to cool off faster is like a heat transfer trick, meaning it takes a certain amount of energy for the soap to melt down other soap. So I'm taking little bits of clear melt and pour soap and I'm putting it in my black, and I'm going to take little bits of white melt and pour soap and put it in my yellow. And what ends up happening is that will drop the temperature of the entire soap faster because it takes energy, aka thermal, this heat, in order to melt it. So it's a heat transfer method, and we'll just stir and stir and stir, and that will drop this so much faster than if I just let it sit here. So our temperatures are just about perfect. This is about 133, this is about 129. And the way I do this is I just kind of pour at the same time and just kind of swirl around, but not too much. These will naturally swirl. One thing I do want to point out is you will have just a little bit of soap left over, and that's totally normal. It'll be a little bit of soap though. So when you go to remelt it in the microwave, because we wouldn't want to waste any soap, make sure you're just doing it on 10-second bursts so you don't end up boiling that soap. And right now what I'm doing is I'm just kind of pouring and swirling just a little bit. My yellow soap, since it has the clay in it, is a little bit harder, faster, and so that's going to make some fun design. It's really great to see these unmolded because no two designs are alike, and I like how some of them have a slight more kind of architectural look to them, and some of them end up looking just a little more subtle. And the swirls are really fun. So I probably have just about 2 ounces left in each container. You can either actually use these in an overflow mold, or again, you can remelt them in kind of 10-second bursts. So the last finishing touch is just to get rid of any air bubbles that are on the surface. So this is just rubbing alcohol and using a spray bottle, and this breaks the surface tension up of the bubbles. I'm gonna let these harden for just at least 4 hours before trying to pop them out. So I made these a little bit earlier, and the secret to these Brambleberry Hexagon molds is that A, you want to let these sit for at least 4 hours. B, they are a straight-sided mold, so they do take a little bit more elbow pressure kind of to get out. So you want to make sure that you're breaking the airlock on every side. That's really going to help when you're pushing these out. And then second, if you really are struggling getting these out, you could always put them in the freezer for just 10 to 15 minutes, but not that much because you don't want glycerin dew. One of the things I love about how this design turns out is every bar is different. Look how different these bars are. I love the contrast here, and I really like the subtle look of this as well. These hexagon molds also fit really nicely in the hands, so I think you're going to be really happy with them once you use them. So packaging things up is really easy to do. You can either do shrink wrap, or you can do like a cellophane bag with a twist tie, or honestly, I love to do saran wrap and use a heat gun to really seal those sides in. One of the things with glycerin soap is that it's naturally rich in humectants, meaning it actually has added glycerin. And so what that means is it will draw moisture to itself. So this bar, when it's sitting out in the open air, will naturally draw moisture to itself. So you do want to wrap these and especially if you're in a humid environment, or else you end up with glycerin dew. Soap Queen TV does have a packaging video, so if you haven't seen it, go find it and go watch it, because I give lots of tips and tricks on that, and also talk a little bit more about glycerin dew, which is basically when kind of like moisture coats the surface of your soap. It doesn't really hurt the soap, but it makes it softer, and it's not quite as pretty, quite honestly. So if you liked this video, please hit the thumbs up button, and of course subscribe to the channel so you get notified every time new videos come out. And when you make this or any other project, I'd like to see it. Everyone would like to see it. It inspires our community. The hashtag is #BrambleOn. And until next time, you guys, thanks for watching.